Okay, thank you, Jonal, for the semi-introduction at least. I'm Tarek Besold from the Digital Media Lab at the University of Bremen, so the upper left corner of Germany. Basically, quoting from one of the greatest cultural achievements of maybe not your home country, but your home island, and now for something completely different. So, thinking, reasoning, understanding, where does AI leave us? I guess many of you yesterday already attended the plenary discussion, which unfortunately I had to miss because, yes, I had to teach. But I would like to invite you to actually just question a couple of very basic notions we usually assume are genuine to our profession or are at least genuine to our human nature. If you read the abstract, there's two keywords in there. One of them is tutoring and education. The other one later on is creativity. This will be the two examples we're going to play around with. So, let's start with tutoring. This is a quote from the webpage of State University New York in Potsdam, like Potsdam, US, not Potsdam nearby. 10 golden rules for being a good tutor. 1, be honest. 2, be flexible. 3, be patient. 4, be a good listener. 5, be professional. 6, be willing to share your own experiences. 7, be a collaborator. 8, teach the student how to learn. 9, be confident. 10, use available resources. Would anyone want to object to any of these? Okay, I take tacit silent as a no. In that case, let's have a look at an example. So what you're seeing here is actually a screenshot from the online forum of an AI course taught at Georgia Tech earlier this year. The student is asking, what is the allowed maximum running time the agent can take to solve one problem? Is there any constraints on the running time? So students are supposed to program something at home, upload it, and because there is like 300 plus students in that course, there are certain requirements on their solutions. Tutor 1 is replying, being kind of annoyed, from the doc for project 1, note the 15 minutes, efficiency, and then you have this long paragraph there. So this being a computer scientist, what you could also have posted is read the fucking manual, RTFM, but at least he tried, right? Then the student replies something like, yeah, currently getting about 11D10E correct with runtime of approximately 2 seconds per RPM. Then another tutor comes in, and this tutor is now like, it's fine if your agent takes a few minutes to run. If it's going to take more than 15 minutes to run, please leave notes in the submission about how long we should expect it to take. We can't have all the projects taking a long time because we have to run them in a reasonable period of time. Then the student replies and the conversation goes on. Which one of the two would you subjectively judge is the better tutor in this moment? Who's in for number 1? Okay, who's in for number 2? Okay. Many people don't like tutors, it seems. Actually, tutor number 2 goes by the name of Jill Watson. So just remember that name. And at the end of the course, which was a usual one-term AI class, basically students could provide feedback, and this is the feedback Jill Watson got. She was the person who would remind us of due dates and post questions in the middle of the week to spark conversations. I wanted to nominate Jill Watson as an outstanding TA. Yeah, somewhat serious and all about giving you the answer. All of which, being a tutor, you probably would love to read about yourself. Well, most of you, or at least some of you, probably know already where I'm heading for. Jill Watson actually is a computer program. It's built upon IBM's Watson Deep QA architecture. It's been developed by Ashok Goel, the gentleman on the left, and his team at Georgia Tech. And actually, Jill Watson was deployed as 1 out of 9 TAs in a graduate level class in AI. So graduate level class in AI here means that we're talking about mostly professional education. So most of the students are at around 40. They are very educated, very motivated, very engaged. So it's not this 18-year-old undergrad Donald was referring to, but it's people who actually really want to get something out of their education and also who want to get something for their money, right? We have 300 plus students in that course. It's mostly online based, so Ashok also produced a MOOC on the topic, and approximately 10,000 forum posts per term. And as I said, we are talking about engaged professionals, so they actually want to get a reply to their forum posts. It's not the usual nonsense. They want to see that their tutors interact. Do the basic math. You have 10,000 forum posts. You have usually 8 tutors, so we're down to 1,250 forum posts. We have 10 weeks per term, so this would be 125 forum posts each tutor would have to answer each week, already without going into contact hours and stuff. Well, Jill Watson actually is built on the IBM Watson cognitive architecture. Ashok and his team used data from previous courses to train her up to level. At first, they used her in a supervised mode in order to get her straight. And actually, when the class was running, they just deployed her on there, and no student was told that Jill Watson is a computer, and actually no student figured. So they were running this thing for at about 3 months without anyone noticing something odd. Admittedly, we are not there yet. But if we go back to these 10 rules, let's go through it. Is Jill Watson honest? Well, she's a freaking computer. What but honest can she be, right? Is she flexible? Yeah, that's a bit of a question here, but at least she's sufficiently flexible to answer posts on the level you just saw. Is she patient? Well, of course, same argument as for one. Is she a good listener? Seems like it, and once again, she's a computer, like she's gonna listen until no more tomorrow. Is she professional? Yes. No emotions, no hard feeling, no read the fucking manual, just a reply. Is she willing to share her experiences? Well, technically she has none. Nonetheless, as I said, we have a massive database, and we have people who pre-equip her. But still, flexibility and experiences, this might still be a difference. Is she a collaborator? Yes. Most definitely. Does she teach the student how to learn? Well, this depends on what you feed into her, right? She's just a front end using the data you provide. Is she confident? Yes, she's a computer. There is no doubt. Does she use available resources? Yes. So at least if this list really describes what a good tutor is, the flexibility and the sharing the own experiences, this needs a bit of good engineering, but everything else, more or less, already comes by the nature of the system itself. Still, there was one moment where students almost discovered that something was going odd. Why? Because one other student asked, should we be aiming for 1,000 words or 2,000 words? I know it's variable, but that's a big difference. And then Jill went in. There isn't a word limit, but we will grade on both depth and succinctness. It's important to explain your design in enough detail so that others can get a clear overview, and so on. And then the student is like, wait, Jill, can you please elaborate on it's important to explain your design in enough detail? So it was about a programming task. What does design mean here, right? At this moment, one of the human TAs goes in. I think Jill is using design as a catch-all statement. For the midterm, it refers to the shortcomings of each technique. For the assignment and projects, it refers to the agent's approach. So what he's doing is basically explaining away why there is that glitch. So why the statistical engine did not turn up an answer which would have addressed your task or your program, but it used the word detail. The student replies, sure enough, thanks Lalith. Another student comes in. This is where it got pretty close. I'm beginning to wonder if Jill is a computer. If there is anything this class has taught me, is that I should always question if someone I've met online is an AI or not. Another one, trying to be funny, her name is Watson, winky smiley. But then comes the one who accidentally saved the day. Seriously, I had the same doubt last week because we were getting such speedy responses from TAs. This is the reason, right? And now it comes. I checked on Google and found some reasons to believe that they are all humans. Hopefully, Ashok Goel has not created Facebook and LinkedIn profiles for the TA agents, if any, that he's using in this course. So by accident, there seemingly is actually someone on LinkedIn and somewhere around the Atlanta area going by the name of Jill Watson. But the discussion died on that. Like from this moment on, everyone was once again convinced, yeah, Jill Watson is legit. So he managed to fool more than 300 professionals doing an AI grad course, right? Nonetheless, this far we are talking solid engineering, and this is deployable. Here we are talking about a showcase, but if you're willing to engage with IBM, if you're willing to invest some money, this could be deployable. Modulo, couple of years of engineering. Where I now want to take you is a step further. So tutoring systems are all about interacting. But one of the buzzwords of the 21st century, of course, is creativity, right? We are walking towards an industry where easily automatizable tasks will be taken over by machines, And of course, all of us here are already, or at least we hope we are already, in the creative industries, which are safe. And we now have to somehow get people also into working in the creative sector and not anymore in the mechanizable areas. Just to give you a bit of a hint at how to distinguish between whether you are on the safe side or not, if you can actually give an accurate description of what your day looks like, probably you should take some evening classes, because the more accurate, the easier to automatize. If you can actually say, well, I'm sitting there a lot and thinking up new concepts, then I wouldn't yet worry about my job for the next 10 to 15 years and maybe not beyond. Still, creativity, big buzzword, and who would not want to educate their students and pupils into being creative? Thus, let's have a look at what creativity actually is and whether Jill Watson is really the end of the line or whether we could go beyond that. First of all, where does creativity usually occur? If you ask people on the street, well, you get the usual things, namely the arts. So, music being one of the prime examples, but of course we also have paintings, and because we are the digital elite and in the 21st century, let's also add computer games as some new form of art. Then, who are actually the creative people? Well, composers, musicians, painters, and if you're wondering who the guy on the lower right is, the gentleman is called Richard Garriott and was in the 90s one of the most, probably one of the most visionary computer programmers and one of the founders of online gaming. Of course, there's more creativity also besides the arts. So if we are talking Emmy Noether, mathematics, if we are talking Marie Curie, chemistry, if we are talking people in turtlenecks, or if actually we are talking random toddlers, right? So if you have your child and your child just starts discovering, okay, I can keep counting, I can make up numbers. If it starts discovering language, the first time your child uses a term it made up, then there is creativity happening. But how can we get this into computers, if at all? Usually, if you want to have a picture symbolizing creativity, it's something like that, right? Lots of colors, bit of a mumbo-jumbo, but definitely non-structured, and thus definitely not on the side where my slide just gets stuck. Definitely not on that side where you have crisp rules, easily programmable things. So, key question, how can we remove that wall and how can we get creativity into the machine? Or, even one step earlier, can we do that? Well, there is a field in which, among many other people, I'm active, called computational creativity research. And in order to give you a bit of a definition of what we actually are working in or what we're aiming for, computational creativity is the philosophy, science, and engineering of computational systems, which, by taking on particular responsibilities, exhibit behaviors that unbiased observers would deem creative. Two things I want to stress. By taking on particular responsibilities, so at first we are talking about a co-creative process. We are not talking about having the machine walk off by itself, but we are talking about, okay, in order to ramp it up, let's interact with the machine. And secondly, exhibit behaviors that unbiased observers would deem creative. So there is no definition of creativity, right? Like, we cannot properly define it. Still, at least we recognize it when it happens. And now let's have a look at a couple of systems. So what you're seeing here is called jape, the Joke Analysis and Production Engine. Apologies for the quality, but still, at least they make me smirk. What's the difference between money and the bottom? One you spare and bank, the other you bear and spank. What's the difference between gardening and driving? One you brush and rake, the other you rush and break. What do you call a strange market? A bizarre bazaar. What do you call a sick bird? An illegal. So you clearly see how these jokes work, right? They aren't overly funny, as I said, but at least there was one or two lost souls who also had to giggle. But how far can we push that? Like, is this all we can do? Well, let's have a look at Mexica, which is a system developed by Rafael Pérez y Pérez at the University of Mexico. Mexica actually is a creative writing system. So what Mexica does is it produces stories along the lines of, well, fake Native American Indian poetry. So, can you read that? Yeah, probably even. Jaguar Knight was an inhabitant of the great Tenochtitlan. Princess was an inhabitant of the great Tenochtitlan. Tlaloc, the god of the rain, was angry and sent a storm. The heavy rain damaged the old wooden bridge. When Jaguar Knight tried to cross the river, the bridge collapsed, injuring badly Jaguar Knight's head. Princess knew that Jaguar Knight could die and that Princess had to do something about it. Princess had heard that the whatever was an effective curative plant. So Princess prepared a plasma and applied it to Jaguar Knight's wounds. It worked and Jaguar Knight started to recuperate. Jaguar Knight realized the Princess' determination had saved Jaguar Knight's life. Of course, probably you can guess where this is heading for, right? So there then is a arch enemy turning up, kidnapping Princess. Jaguar Knight, of course, has fallen in love with her because she saved him. The usual thing, everyone then goes up to hit the other guy. They manage to overcome the arch enemy. Unfortunately, towards the end, Princess had ambivalent thoughts towards Jaguar Knight. On the one hand, Princess had strong feelings for Jaguar Knight, but on the other hand, Princess abominated what Jaguar Knight did. So, short explanation, it turned out from a tattoo he was wearing that he was an arch enemy of her family and had murdered, I don't know, someone close to Princess. So Princess felt a deeply odium for Jaguar Knight, invoking some other god of the dead. Princess cut Jaguar Knight's jugular. The blood covered the floor. Princess took a dagger and cut Princess' throat. Princess bled to death, while Tonatiuh, the god representing the sun, disappeared in the horizon. Clearly, this is not yet Shakespeare. Don't get me wrong. This is not even Dan Brown. But if you have a look at a random soap opera or 2 out of 3 Hollywood blockbusters, the story pretty much gets it. We are here going for one of the more tragic things, where in the end everyone is lying on the ground bleeding to death. But nonetheless, you have a usual pattern, which is automatically put into a story generation. You can also do that, for example, for Russian folktales, because Russian folktales actually are roughly characterizable by a set of 130 constraint rules. You pick some of them, you fiddle in a story, and it sounds, yeah, pretty much like your average Rasputin tale. But let's switch types of art. So, painting. Aaron was a system developed by Harold Cohen, the gentleman standing on the picture. And Aaron basically, well, you see Aaron. Aaron is this entire makeshift painting thing on the left. It's a big plotter. Cohen, in the late 60s, I think, started programming Aaron. He kept adding to one program file over and over again, always introducing new rules, never deleting old ones. So 5 years into it, he hardly had an idea of what the thing was doing anymore. 10 years into it, he had no freaking clue. 20 years into it, Aaron was more and more becoming autonomous in a way. Harold Cohen unfortunately died earlier this year. Aaron keeps on producing art. So as long as you don't pull the plug, Aaron is doing something. No one knows what it's doing because, yeah, the program file is just too huge and too interwoven. On the right, you see one of the nativist pictures. So, little thought experiment. We are talking about artificial painters here, right? For you, where does a painter start if it's not an artificial one? Is it enough to reproduce a visual scene to be called a painter? Who would say yes? Okay. If I'm able to adapt color and style to information contained in the scene, so say I can have a basic look at your face, I figure that you're sad or depressed, and I change the color palette to grayish, and I go for impressionism rather than for cubist style. Is this enough to consider me a painter? Who would say yes? Oh, you're quite demanding. So, and if I'm now able to adapt color and style to external or contextual information, so if I can somehow capture the zeitgeist at the moment, say after 9/11, if I'm now able to say on the 12th of September, yeah, okay, today I'm gonna paint something very gloomy, very dark, and I have a look at someone and I additionally figure, okay, they clearly are deeply depressed, probably they were affected in a way or another, so I adapt my color palette to that. Is this sufficient to actually be a painter? Yeah, getting warmer? Okay. So, and if I now can take a decision about whether I want to paint or not, so if I can use the mood in the air, if I now am on the 12th of September and I'm like, no, today I'm not going to paint, like, I'm not in the mood for it, in addition to all the other stuff, am I a painter now? Is this sufficient? Okay, getting a couple of more people. And if I can do all of this, and whatever I produce then is sold on the general art market, so I can put it in a gallery, someone's walking by and is like, yeah, $700, quit. Am I a painter then? Okay, so meet the painting fool, which is a system developed by Simon Colton, originally at Imperial, later at Goldsmiths, now at Falmouth. The painting fool does all of this. So what do? Reproducing a visual scene, this is basically a digital camera, right? Like there is no magic in that. Adapting color and style to information contained in the scene, it's very easy to get semantic markers from faces. It's very easy to see whether a scene is animated or not. This actually Photoshop can do. Adapting color and style to external contextual information. Okay, I go on Twitter, I take the most trending posts, I have a look whether the adjectives are positively or negatively correlated. I have pre-coded 120 color and style patterns. I take them, I throw it over your elaborate Photoshop, there you go. Taking a decision about whether to paint or not, same thing. I take a random draw, and I once again take Twitter. Either the random draw brings up 1 out of 10 cases, please go away, or I figure, okay, Germany has won the soccer world championship. I'm totally into painting today, so I start to reach out. Or if I'm Brazilian on that day, I'm probably not going to paint. And then selling the resulting work on the general art market, the painting fool by now has sold 2 or 3 of the paintings actually in just standard galleries without the mark, this is computer art, or without the mark of this is fractal art. And by the way, this also introduces interesting questions. So what you're looking at here, this dancing scene, it's made with one 18-kilometer-long brushstroke. No human painter ever is going to do that. So are we talking about a superhuman painter? Yeah. Who knows? What people now usually say is, yeah, sure, but this only works in domain whatever. Possibly. But at least we didn't find a domain yet where it doesn't work. So if you go for arts, we have automated painters. By the way, does anyone want to guess why it's called Aaron? Harold Cohen had been planning on producing several, and he wanted to make sure that it's in alphabetical order very at the beginning, so he needed a name with AA. Colton's The Painting Fool, automated composers. So the music you heard was not a Vivaldi. This was actually composed by David Cope's Experiments in Musical Interpretation. It is learned from Vivaldi's style. It's been recorded by the London Symphony Orchestra and others, but it is a computer-composed piece. François Pachy and his flow machines, they are currently very, very successful. We have automated poets like Mexica, but also like Pablo Gervas Aspera. We have an automated chef. So Jill Watson is the sister of what's called Chef Watson, an engine producing interesting recipes and ingredients. We are using creative systems in science and technology, so mathematics, the automated mathematician, Simon Colton's human reasoner, or a project I have been working on called Concept Invention Theory, where you basically automatize mathematical theory building. What we, for example, managed to do is we could give an alternative characterization for Galois theory, if anyone is into freaky maths. You have lots of computer systems in design and architecture. They are mostly co-creative, so developing shapes, developing for architecture perfect lighting patterns, suggesting to the architect what would be different options of how to arrange objects, and the architect in the end actually only says, I like that, I don't like these. Education and learning. So what Jill is doing there is she's not only telling people look up in the manual, but she's also telling him, well, listen, you can give more time to your program, just let us know. What Jill also can do partially is she can generate questions. And we're not only talking statistical, right? We're talking some shallow semantic analysis, and you can auto-generate test questions on that. There's plenty of systems for these things. So whilst clearly there is no Beethoven in there and there is no Frida Kahlo in there yet, we are moving towards automated creativity. Now, concluding slide. Pulling it all together, the Gretchenfrage of computational, artificial, automated cognitive stuff, intelligence, creativity, reasoning, whatever. is the behavior enough? So some of you would have said, okay, at least when it's able to sell the stuff on the art market, I'm willing to call it a painter. It's hard to argue why not, right? Because, yeah, what do we know about how the painter usually works? And I don't mean what do we know about the techniques he applies, it's more about how do we know exactly why he came up with that motif or why she chose that color pattern. Open for interpretation. But this rather than changes the question. It's not, is the behavior really enough? And I'm here also talking about teaching and tutoring. It's, do we want it to be enough? So do we actually want to have Jill Watson deployed? Do we actually want to have automated creativity? Do we actually want to have, if we think it further, automated teachers? Or rephrasing, and I actually think this is a question. It's not that it's anyhow gonna happen, because, well, we might be pushing that direction, but in the end, even people like I who are way down the theoretical rabbit hole, our research, A, needs funding, but we also want to have societal agreement on it. So if there is something society just tells us, no, not at all, we're gonna consider this no, not at all. So where do we want to go? Do we actually want to open up teaching? Do we want to open up creativity to go beyond the human spectrum and that we do not necessarily require the actor or agent to be human? Or, alternative way, do we precisely say, well, creativity should be something human just because, I don't know, kinship argument. We presume that we have a rich inner life, the artist has a rich inner life. Or for teaching, do we just say, well, it might not be statistically salient on an online forum, but we presume that as a teacher who had learning experience, I still have some surplus which might not simply show up in the numbers. And of course, you can then also play it a step further. So this is more tricky, but do we want to actually put teachers out of teaching? So do we also want to go there? As a final closing nota bene, the answers to these questions probably are different for whatever cognitive stuff you address. So creativity is different from intelligence, is different from reasoning, is different from invention and teaching. Still, the question always stays the same. And I don't know how the debate ended yesterday. I'm fairly sure you had very different opinions on it. But keep asking these questions and keep sharing your opinions. Because, as I say, we do listen. Yeah, thank you.